Hi folks, this is Joe. Today we've got a special treat for you. In the spirit of HBO's Vice, MSNBC's intrepid reporter Richard Engel, and Britt Hume in his heyday that no one seems to recall, we are in the heart of the steamy jungle here to interview the shadowy leader of the MWM, namely General Geego. Now, folks, it may help to understand the plight of these freedom fighters or survivalists or whatever you want to call them if you understand the manifest of the MWM, or just if you want to understand what MWM stands for. We'll ask the general who's with me now. General Geego, perhaps you could tell the listening audience what MWM stands for. Did you get that, folks? Okay, you probably didn't, but luckily we have an electronic phonetic translator device. It's an iPhone app, really, which will help you understand the other half of this conversation. Now, let me fire this thing up, okay? Okay. General, if you wouldn't mind repeating what you just said.
It stands for monkeys with machine guns, old chap.
Okay, well, that's fine. And you yourself, you are a monkey, is that correct?
Good sir, I am a noble pan troglodytes.
Well, that's a... Well, are you talking about a chimpanzee like Tarzan's cheetah?
All right, if you insist, a chimpanzee. However, not like Tarzan's cheetah, for Christ's sake.
Now, General, my listening audience, I'm sure, would be interested in your story. That is, what drove your noble warriors into the woods like this, and what's your goal? Some would say it's akin to reverse Darwinism, or that you all have seen the Planet of the Apes one too many times. You know, when a bunch of you broke out of the zoo and took over that drive-in theater way back then. I hear that many of your female companions developed, well, shall we say, the hots for Charlton Heston.
My dear misguided fellow, do you believe absolutely everything you hear on Fox and Friends morning show?
Well, word has it that Steve Ducey might actually be one of y'all, shaved and everything. And the sound engineers at Fox are actually dubbing out his voice, monkey sounds, replacing his articulations with some kind of talking nerd they keep back in...
No comment. My good fellow, genetically flawed Joe. If you want to know the truth of it, it was all those reports from the Queen of the Art Bell show, Linda Moulton Howe. It was when the UFOs lost interest in cow sushi and went on to the zoos. The San Diego Zoo, the Minnesota Grizzly Coast, the San Francisco Zoo, the DC House of Congress. Well, with all the scuttlebutt about the UFO apocalypse, we decided to do a little, prep work. The squirrel monkey's motto and all. So we decided to put together a group, kind of like your own NRA group with a percentile fuller adornment of intelligence, as it were. And also, there's the thing about the second coming, old boy.
But the second coming of what? King Kong? Folks, it looks like we have something coming up, but I'll be danged. Look at that. It's a UFO right over the treetops, folks, and out of the bottom is coming some kind of dish on an arm or something or other. Henry, let's you and me, we better, let's vamoose.
from around the globe tonight.
Severe atmospheric disturbance. Disruption of broadcast transmission.
Television, radio, even parts of the internet are affected.
Welcome to the Joe Casteristic Hoedown. Hi, folks. Just when you thought it was safe, out comes another Joe-castic podcast, and wouldn't you know it, you forgot to duck. Now, due to the graphic subject matter, viewer discretion is advised. So if you're of the squeamish sort, just swivel around in that desk chair and look at something comforting for a while. That photo of your Aunt May or that moon base that you've been building with your erector set since the 60s, or that plant that by now looks a little like it should be on the set of Little Shop of Horrors. By the way, do you ever feed that thing? Now, here lately, you'd be forgiven for believing that the world has had a little bit too much spiked fruit punch at the party and has decided to hot rod up and down the street in rush hour traffic. I mean, you know, it's like the signs are everywhere, folks. Stephen Colbert is leaving the Colbert Nation. Rupert Murdoch tries to buy HBO. Ex-Marlboro man Rick Perry, governor of Texas, puts on glasses and tries to speak intelligently. And what about that George Norrie, where these days, every time he opens up his mouth, out comes the angels of apocalypse flying out his rumpus with those burning swords and everything? Wow, you know, I mean, the signs are everywhere. But like my grandpappy used to say, you will know when the worldwide jig is up when a white buffalo becomes the mascot of the Cleveland Indians. And when, in that same year, a pop singer comes out wearing a dress made of meat. But heck, that'll never happen. By the way, Lady Gaga, where did she get that name? From some 6-month-old? Is she the, Lady Gugu's evil twin or something? Well, anyway, but you know, according to some very bright minds, the world, or at least our habitation of it, was to have ended many times over by now. There was the so-called Great Disappointment of the Seventh-day Adventists, where back in the mid-1800s, the leader of the sect announced the exact date of the second coming. And as that time came and went, so did many a believer, and their farms and all their possessions did also come and go. Well, mostly go in that process during that time. But let's see, those Seventh-day Adventists folks, they were not nearly the only ones that was, disappointed that Jesus did not come down to kick all our butts off the planet and all. Much to the dismay of hordes of followers all over the earth, all throughout history, there were others, as a matter of fact. There were other predictions of other events just like this. So many of them that I looked this up on wikipedia.org and I ran out of toes and fingers in the process. Let's see. Here are some examples for you. On January the 1st, in the year 1000, Pope Sylvester II. Yep, there was actually a pope named Sylvester, him and Cardinal Tweedybird, I guess. Just knew the world would end on the date 1/1/1000. And hey, why not? So riots broke out all over Europe and masses of pilgrims headed to the east to Jerusalem, where no doubt they were treated with plenty of kosher food and loads of funky accordion music, but very little else. So I guess they went home disappointed without that big ticket to ride in the great beyond. So then, after that, they thought, okay, the world must be going to end in 1033, 1,000 years after Jesus' death instead of his birth. But they all woke up that morning and still had to cut wood and carry water and mow the lawn and wash dishes and all those normal things. And then later, John of Toledo, not that Toledo, predicted that the end of the world would come 1186. 1186, that is, in the year 1186, based on the alignment of the planets back then. But the planets lined up, and the next day it was just another day. And in 1284, Pope Innocent III, yeah, good name there, predicted that the world would end 666 years after the rise of Islam. And I guess that fizzled too. You see, 666, that rings a bell somewhere. Okay, here's another good one. Some London astrologers got everybody going in 1524 when they predicted the world would end by a flood starting in London based on calculations made the previous June. So 20,000 Londoners left their homes and headed for higher ground in anticipation. Well, I guess they might still be there. Higher ground in the UK? Isn't that a little like the mountains in Kansas then? Oh, I guess they left for Scotland where the soccer was a bit more civilized and etc. Then, you know, I mean, we go through the calendar, then onward to the end, or a bunch of ends, predicted anyway. Not to be mistaken for happy endings, mind you. 1524, a planetary alignment in Pisces was seen by some astrologers as a sign of the end. Yep, having known a Pisces myself, I can see why they might have drawn that conclusion. In 1528, on May 27th, Hans Hut predicted that the world would occur on that day. I think he showed up in Die Hard later on, didn't he, Hans? Maybe that was his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson or something. Yeah, okay, in 1533, October the 19th, Michael Steffel, this mathematician calculated that Judgment Day would begin on 8 a.m. on 1533, October the 19th. But I think he forgot to carry the 1 on over to the root of 666 or something like that. So, missed that one. Shucks. Okay, in 1656, Christopher Columbus, a name that we all should know all over the world, in his Book of Prophecies, wow, he made a Book of Prophecies, I had no idea. Columbus predicted that the world would end during 1956. And then, let me see, when that didn't happen, in 1958, Columbus claimed that the world was created in 5343 BCE and would last 7,000 years, assuming no 0 year. That means that the world will come to an end in 1658, as opposed to 1656, according to his earlier prediction. And then I guess he got back on his boat and just kept sailing on after that. Oh, later in 1666, there's that number again. Where does that come from? Sabatini Zev, following his failed prediction earlier of 1648, Zev recalculated the end of the Earth in 1666. Okay. In 1688, John Napier, this mathematician, calculated that the end of the world would be this year based on calculations from the Book of Revelation. It looks like back then, we had mathematicians run wild in the streets. It looked like scaring the holy bejeebers out of everybody. Well, they must know something about numbers. We don't. Okay, in the Shakers, then, a little bit later on, predicted that the world would end in both 1792 and 1794. They were really hedging their bets on that one, I suppose. George Rapp, the founder of the Harmony Society, preached that Jesus would return in his lifetime, even as he lay dying on August the 7th, 1847. So he predicted that Jesus would come back that same day he was laying dying on that. Man, that is one optimistic dude there for you. Come on, Jesus. Come down here to meet me, or I'll come up to meet you. I guess one way or another, that prediction came true for that fellow. Okay, 1874, Charles Taze Russell. And these are all big wig people, I want you to understand. I mean, these were all very respected individuals back in history. Here we are up to 1874, predicted the return of Jesus to occur in 1874. And after this date, Charlie, reinterpreted the prediction to say that Jesus had indeed returned, but in invisible form. Well, it's great. Like I told my wife the other day, we became billionaires, honey, in the year 2004, but our bank account for this one is also in invisible form. And also, I now have a bumper sticker on the back of my car that says, my other car is a Cadillac, but it's invisible. Makes the other drivers positively green with envy, that one. Okay, then a bit later, the Catholic Apostolic Church, I know something about that, being raised as a Catholic boy in an apostolic church, was founded in 1831, claimed that Jesus would return by the time the last of its 12 founding members died. The last member died in 1901. In 1910, let me see, Camille Flammarion predicted that the 1910 appearance of Halley's Comet would impregnate the atmosphere and possibly snuff out all life on the planet, but not the planet itself. Well, I guess if you're going to impregnate an atmosphere, it's either, it's black or white. Either you are or you aren't. Either the planet is or anyway. Comet pills were sold to protect against toxic gases that would occur then. And the comet indicated the second coming to many. Wow, comet pills. Boy, if they had that for sale, I mean, I'd be taking those now. It sounds like it just gets you all kind of, zesty energy or something. I sure hate to pee out comet pills, so I wonder, boy, that might hurt. In any case, I mean, the only way you can look at this is enterprising, to say the least. Let me see. In 1918, the International Bible Students Association, that is in 1918, predicted that Christendom would go down as a system to oblivion and be succeeded by revolutionary governments. God would destroy the churches wholesale and the church members by the millions. Church members would perish by the sword of war. Revolution and anarchy. The dead would lie unburied. In 1920, all earthly governments would disappear with worldwide anarchy prevailing. I guess they turned that one into a Mad Max movie. Or hey, with that Barry Hussein up there in the White House, well, we might already be. Maybe they just missed it by, 90 years. Okay, Herbert W. Armstrong, founder of the Worldwide Church of God, told members of his church that the rapture was to take place in 1936, and that only they would be saved. This us and them thing, man, you better be us, because if you're them, boy, the hellfire's gonna hit you on the head out there. After the prophecy failed, he changed the date 3 more times. And later became the main inspiration for Bullwinkle's famous utterance, "This time for sure." And I got to get me a new hat. In 1962, February the 4th, Gene Dixon and various Indian astrologers, they all predicted that a planetary alignment on this day was to bring destruction to the world. Mass prayer meetings were reported from India, probably praying that Gene Dixon would put that bouffant hairdo in the wind and sail back home, I would think. Come to think of it, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse did indeed arrive in New York around that time. I think their names were John, Paul, George, and Ringo. I think. Anyway, in 1967, August the 20th, George Van Tassel said that this day would mark the beginning of the third woe of the apocalypse. That is, I'm sorry, I got to repeat that again, the third woe of the apocalypse, during which the southeastern United States would be destroyed by a Soviet nuclear attack. And according to this UFO prophet, who claimed to have channeled an alien named Ashtar. Boy, that rings a bell. I think I have a personal relationship with Ashtar. Didn't he develop the first, whoopee cushion? And I think he appeared on Laugh-In several times, didn't he? 1967, yeah. Okay, in 1975, Jehovah's Witness, from 1966 on, Jehovah's Witness published articles which stated that the fall of 1975 would be 6,000 years since man's creation, and suggested that Armageddon would be finished by then. But wait, when did it start? Oh yeah, when the Fab Four Horsemen arrived in New York and sang, "I want to hold your flaming sword on earth." William M. Braun, a Christian minister, predicted that the rapture would occur no later than 1977. But what actually happened in May of 1977 that did have momentous worldwide impact did occur in the form of none other than the first Star Wars movie, when Leia started shooting her ray gun with those buns upside her head. Yeah, boy, that just ran ripples all over the planet back then. So that must have been what the Christian minister was talking about. That also reminds me of a recent survey that rated the popularity of Darth Vader several points higher than the U.S. Congress up there in Washington, D.C.
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough.
Just a little factoid, a little fun fact there for you. In 1978, Leland Jensen predicted that there would be a nuclear disaster in 1980, followed by 2 decades of conflict, culminating in God's kingdom being established on Earth. I guess amongst the sizzling radioactive soil and all those Godzillas coming out of the oceans and all. Not to mention those skyscraper-tall Pillsbury Doughboys. Wow. Man, if that's heaven on earth, I guess to science fiction authors it might be. Yeah, and it goes on. We're getting close to modern times, folks, so this stuff might actually be real here, so listen up. In 1982, April through June, the Tara Centers released all these full-page ads in many newspapers on April the 24th, 1982, stating that the Christ is now here, quote unquote, and that he would make himself known within the next 2 months. But sheesh, they must not have been in very good touch, because Ronald Reagan had already been elected by then, so that call was a little bit too late, I guess. And also in late 1976, the infamous Pat Robertson predicted that the end of the world would come in 1982. But instead, Chris Wallace becomes co-anchor of the Today Show in that year, so I guess that's close but no cigar. In 1987, let me see, Leland Jensen predicted that Halley's Comet would be pulled into Earth's orbit on April the 29th, 1988, causing widespread destruction, kind of like a worldwide Kiss concert tour, sort of that kind of effect. Instead, it turned out to be Bill Haley's and the Comet's last tour, so, not the hugest of deals there. But I imagine a whole bunch of people did go into rapture as a result of that. In 1987, August, a bunch of stuff in 1987, August the 17th, Jose Arguelles claimed that Armageddon would take place unless 144,000 people gathered in certain places in the world in order to resonate in harmony on that day. Well, they did, and I think most of them ended up in my backyard completely freaking out our cats. In 1990, Elizabeth Clare Prophet predicted a nuclear war would start on this day, and the world would end 12 days later, leading her followers to stockpile shelter with supplies and weapons. I love it. Here comes Jesus, the Prince of Peace, so let's go out and stock up on bazookas and AK-47s. Heck, why not? This is the USA. Later, after Prophet's prediction did not come to pass, she was diagnosed with epilepsy and Alzheimer's disease. Too bad her followers did not go out and stockpile funding for epilepsy and the Alzheimer's Foundation with that one at that time. So let's see. 1991, a Russian-born rabbi called for the Messiah to come by and start the Jewish New Year. 1991, Louis Farrakhan, Armageddon, the first Gulf War. 1992, Roland Stewart said the whole thing would go up in a bang. 1993, David Berg, same thing. 1994, the Baha'i sect leader predicted New York would be hit by nuclear bombs. 1998, March 31, Chen Dao-ho-ming-chen, leader of the Taiwanese cult God's Salvation Church, or Qingdao Yin, the True Way, claimed that God would come to Earth in a flying saucer at 10 a.m. on this date. Moreover, God would have the same physical appearance as Chen himself. Chen chose to base his cult in Garland, Texas, because he thought it sounded like God's land. On March 25th, God was to appear on Channel 18 on every television set in the U.S. Wow, but a little, right about that, a little later, YouTube came along, and so I guess no one was watching Channel 18 that day. Okay, and then around this time, 1999, a prediction ascribed to Nostradamus stating the King of Terror would come from the sky in 1999 plus 7 months, and that would lead to fears of the end. And likewise, the artist formerly known as Prince predicted we would all party like it was 1999, so I guess they were both kind of right about that. Also in 1999, Timothy Dwight IV, president of Yale University, foresaw Christ's millennium and the end of it all starting by 2000. Then there was a Y2K bug and the election of George Bush, and devastating world fire, bombs, disease, Earth axis shifting, flying saucers flying, second coming, final war between good and evil. Be afraid. Be very, very afraid that we'll all be spanked. Let me ask you a question, folks, about all this. I realize that was one of my longer diatribes, but I think I'm seeing a little bit of a pattern, kind of a tendency in here. Could it be that all this stuff rings true because it is? That is, might we all have a deep sense of mortality, and not just when we hit our thumbs with a hammer, but all the time, down deep, that every day brings us closer to the end. I mean, that day when they lower us in a pine box and all of our friends gather around and pretend that he was such a good dude and all. Could it be that each of us carries this stuff like a two-legged walking Armageddon, especially after eating too much pizza, of course, but that we are particularly moved by some folks because of this when they say that the end of days are near, because the end of days are indeed near for every one of us. But, folks, what's even closer than the end times are those moments in which we are That is, in every moment of every passing day where existence is as undeniable as your old socks and that frayed toothbrush you just can't let go of. But when it comes to mass population extinction events, as disappointing as this may be to some, we just keep loping along. So here's the thought. Instead of just waiting around for that next turn of the tail, why don't we just keep the air good and the water clean and the food we grow for each other wholesome? And just stop waving bullets and missiles around. So when that big Rock of Ages rock star JC guy comes back flashing all that cosmic bling with all his fluffy white winged entourage and all, don't you think that it just might be a good idea to see to it that when he does come back, he then looks around, nods his whiskered chin, and smiles and says, "Good job, brothers. Good job, sisters. I see you went on taking care of the place real fine-like when I was gone." Then he gives us a high five. That is the highest of high fives that anybody ever had and will ever get. So if we really want to be deserving of some kind of ride on the Rapture rocket, wouldn't you think that making a good impression on the big dude would, I don't know, count for something major? P.S. Just a note going out there to all you, you preppers out there sitting in your bunkers with all the canned goods and ammunition and all that stuff. Just a thought here that I just had. Now just ponder this just for 2 seconds, if you would. Rather than prepping for the worst, how about prepping for the best? Because, if we all did that, or if a large percent of us did that, well, that's the best way to guarantee that the worst will never ever happen.
Magnificent perfection.
We're all cursed on this black magic night. Oh, Jimmy Bones.
Now, folks, despite the rumor to the contrary, my Uncle Ned is still not dead. Well, he was, and now he's come back again with some great advice for our new segment that we call Is Ned Dead?, where participating members can sit back and figure it out for themselves.
Ned's not dead.
Hi, folks. Tonight is a whopping special night. Well, every night's pretty special around here, but especially tonight for us older folks on a fixed income. Well, unlike your dog Scruffy, you'll be fixed no more after we reveal this little-known secret of how you too can be a millionaire several times over, and a very clean one too, I might add. Why, it'll be like Mr. Howell and Gilligan with those coconut clubs on that bamboo putting green all day long under swaying palm trees. But I guess you'll, after you schedule that 3-hour tour, well, let's just hope the minnow won't get tossed. Hey, I know I'm digressing a bit, but that brings to mind the eternal question that for a lot of us old dudes goes unanswered since the 60s. And while your life is probably complicated enough and we don't want to add any more fidgeting to your daily routine, the age-old question, Ginger or Marianne, is still a proposition that is very much up in the air for a lot of us guys. To make it even harder, I tell you right here and now that there's been a third option since those days that no one ever seems to talk about. What? Henry's talking to me. What? No, not the professor. Henry. The question as I see it should be a multiple choice of 3, not 2. Ginger, Marianne, or Ellie Mae. Okay, back to our subject. Now, all you billionaires can just tune out, hit the delete key or whatever. You old money 1%ers can just tune out and just go to your rooms right now. Make room for the wild bunch of the new 2%ers. So here we come. Okay, they gone? Okay, good. Here it is. Just between us little old dudes, okay? Okay. Now, this is a way you will gain easy access to unlimited income. Kind of like that Eddie Murphy guy who became an accountant of one sort or another, who started channeling half pennies into his account when he wrote that song Pennies from Heaven or whatever, right? Except with this, you don't have to be no accountant. Heck, to make this work, you didn't even have to be able to count that well, okay? So, heck, just get one of those coin counters that your butler can use, when you snap your fingers and point to the washing machine. Oops, I almost buried the lead. Okay, well, here it is anyway. If you happen to have a young one with a toy drum or a monkey in the house that knows how to play one, just have them do a drum roll now. Okay. You know, when you wash your pants, okay, when you have a washer load going and you're washing your pants in there and you start hearing that jingling and tinkling in there, well, here's what you do. I mean, this is unlimited income, okay? This will work every time. You open up the washing machine lid, okay, and then you reach into the warm water, or if it's a dryer, you wait for that point, I guess. And you reach in there and then you pull out what's jingling around. That'll be coins, okay? All right, so you put them in a little bowl, all right? And then you finish washing your pants and all that. Okay, now wash your pants again, all right? You hear the jingles in there, you pull them out, and then wash your pants again. Here's a secret now. The more you wash your pants, the richer you become. It comes right out of the washing machine and it'll be like your life savings right there. It'll come out every day just like an ATM machine that just goes round and round and round, where you don't even have to put no card into. Okay, so I was going to patent this, but I decided to give it to the world for free. So just get those giant house-sized piggy banks going, and then you can just fill them up just all the time, okay? So remember, you heard it from Joe's Uncle Ned right here. So tune in next week, and heck, then I'll have some tips about how you could, ride around on a cruise boat, and you just might meet Ellie Mae or one of them ladies on some island somewhere. Alrighty, bye-bye.
Ned's not dead.
Is the show really over?
Well, Joe Castic podcast listeners, you probably had enough by now, but just to make sure, I want you to check your ears for any excessive outflow. Nothing leaking out? Good, that means you probably got room for more, so you might want to subscribe to our podcast using iTunes or get our next podcast any number of ways from our website at joecastic.com. And if you make some sort of sensible comment on the site, well, heck, we might just get it in our next podcast, and that right there would be something to write home about, don't you think? So I hope you survive the onslaught of outrageous fortune until we can yak at you again next time, right here from the good old US of A on the third planet in the solar system in the Milky Way.
Comes out nice and wiggly like.
Delicious.
Visit joecastic.com.